the abuse of women and children. Several AU leaders have called for African countries to leave the court based in The Hague because they say it unfairly targets Africans. They want the continent to have its own court for dealing with human rights abuses. The Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, who for some years has defied the IEC arrest warrant over alleged atrocities on Darfur, is in Kigali. This is after Rwanda promised he would not be arrested. The two-day summit will also discuss the crisis in South Sudan and plans for an AU passport, which will eventually allow visa-free travel in all 54 member states. Leaders meeting over South Sudan are divided on whether to impose an arms embargo on the country. This follows renewed fighting in the world's newest nation. While the United Nations Secretary Ban Ki-moon pushed for an arms embargo as well as targeted sanctions, African leaders opposed an embargo, indicating that it would leave a vacuum and plunge the country into further chaos. The leaders, however, agreed that the UN peacekeeping mission should be enhanced and in the capital Juba should be demilitarised. The meeting was attended by East African Regional Bloc, IGAD, leaders South Africa, as well as the African Union high-level panel on South Sudan. Now we are joined live by SABC News presidential correspondent Mzwandile Mbeje. A very good morning to you, Mzwa.
A very good morning to you, Renee.
We understand the official opening is at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Is President Jacob Zuma expected to deliver a speech?
The official opening, as you have said, is going to be at 2. But what I can say is that that will be the official opening. The summit is already underway. Maybe the behind the doors sessions where they are considering a number of issues. Indeed, President Jacob Zuma is part of those important gatherings that are happening that we are seeing here. There's a number of issues that are being considered. For example, the issue of the Continental Free Trade Area. You know that in the AU summit in Johannesburg, it was agreed that by 2017, the Free Trade Area agreement needed to be concluded for the entire continent. That's one of the important issues that is really being discussed here. Another issue we have spoken about earlier, my colleagues have spoken about the issue of common passport, particularly for leaders. This is aimed at easing the movements and the goods so that the continent really can be able to trade easily and freely. So the reason why I mentioned the Continental Free Trade Area, because what this summit is trying to do, they are trying to ease the links between the countries of the continent, because it's pointless to speak about unity, to speak about the common purpose, yet there are obstacles that prevent all of that. And the other issue really that hinders the functioning or the proper functioning of the African Union is the issue of funding. You know, one of the resolutions that the African Union has taken was that it needed to win itself of the foreign aid or reliance on foreign people insofar as carrying out its projects. But it seems that hasn't happened successfully. So it's another issue really that the leadership needs to discuss. And the Sudan, the issue of South Sudan really is dominating, because with the fighting going on in that area, it really poses a greater problem for the continent. So all in all, those are the issues that will be discussed. But we can say this summit has been themed as the summit which focuses particularly on human rights, and human rights that relate to women. You know, when there are wars in the continent, when there are displacement of people, so it's women who are at the receiving end. So it's important that the continent is able to really recognize that the most vulnerable women and children are the ones who are in trouble. So what is happening is that the AU is placing an emphasis on the issue of human rights and women. So, and there are a lot of other issues, Renee, that are being discussed, which really try to ensure that the continent is able to lift itself from the poverty, and they unite, and then they go forward insofar as developing the entire region.
Now, South Sudan is featuring quite prominently at the summit this year. What is South Africa's stance on South Sudan?
I may not have heard your entire question, but I did hear that you were talking about South Sudan featuring prominently. Indeed, South Sudan has been featuring prominently because, as we speak, fighting has started again. As recently as last week, the two leaders met to try and thresh out the way forward so as to bring peace in that country. But the problem is that it appears that they may have lost some control over some of their commanders, because how do you justify when the leaders decide to meet and whilst they're meeting and then the fighting breaks out? So that is the issue that the leadership here, the AU leadership, is really seized with. So they are looking at ways on how to deal with this thing, because at the end of the day, so people, ordinary people are dying there. Women and children are the ones at the receiving end. So the leadership can just not sit down, and they have to do something. So what is happening is that they would not obviously have same strategies insofar as how to tackle it. So there would be those arguments, and some people will probably prefer that UN soldiers be deployed there. Others would obviously not want that situation. So as I speak to you now, they are in the closed session where President Jacob Zuma is also part of that meeting. So thrashing out that issue of South Sudan. We hope that by the end of the day, maybe not today, but tomorrow, so we'll be able to have a clearer picture of what sort of decision they took regarding the issue of South Sudan, because it's the issue that is of concern to everyone here.
Now, women and children are also a focus at the summit this year, and women and children are also a focus here in South Africa at the AIDS summit, which is expected to start tomorrow, and Ban Ki-moon is also expected to attend. Can we see President Jacob Zuma returning to South Africa for the AIDS conference?
What you would see, if it has not happened already, is that President Jacob Zuma has really issued a statement welcoming delegates who are attending the very important conference that is taking place there in South Africa. And we expect him on Tuesday to perhaps go there and make an appearance. I'm not sure whether he would deliver one of those key messages, but I can tell you that he will make an appearance at the AIDS conference, because this is a very important conference. The Ban Ki-moon that you've just spoken about, he also is here to be part of this important summit, because at the end of the day, children, women are the people who really must feature prominently when you want to build a better world. So that is what is happening now, is that from here we expect President Jacob Zuma to then travel to South Africa, well, I think to Durban, where he will be part of the AIDS conference. It's a very important conference for the country, and in fact for the continent and the globe as a whole.
Well, thank you very much, Mzwandile, for that update from Kigali. That, of course, is our presidential correspondent, Mzwandile Mbeje, live from Kigali.